What's up? And welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your 2019 year in television. Dave, my partner, is joining me. I am Pat Sheehan. Dave, I wanted to ask you. Um, we're into the 2020 now. We're into a new decade. We already did our best TV of the decade, best music of the decade, best movies of the decade. But how are you feeling about the last year of the decade in terms of television, 2019?
Strong. Watched the most TV this year of any year I've ever watched TV. Things like 35, 36 shows with a few more I still kind of want to see. It's a lot. Too much, probably. But yeah, I feel good. What about you?
I think this was the strongest year of TV since we've started doing the podcast. You know, we obviously missed the peak TV time, earlier in the decade, and we touch on that in our decade review. But this feels like just stacked, and it's actually interesting in making my list. And I guess maybe a good time to jump into how we're going about making the list. I kind of wanted to go with just like what I felt was like excellence, but also like rewatchability. What also like drove conversation. But also like picking things that just really I felt like I didn't want to miss. I think with television, because a lot of things are dropped on streaming, I feel like maybe I don't need to see it the first day. I can catch up, 2 or 3 days later. But if something's dropped weekly and I feel like, okay, I need to see this episode tonight before the conversation gets away from me, I'm going to miss it. I really prioritize that. And I loaded up my list to like probably 7 or 8 or 9 before I was like, okay, now I need to like figure out what gets the last spot on my list. It felt pretty easy for me. How did it feel for you?
Yeah, I feel like I had a lot of this list built months in advance, and it was just a matter of what things get to the tough cut. And overall, I feel pretty good about it. Some easy usual suspects common on most lists this year, some not so much, but yeah, I think there's a lot of variety. I mean, there's still plenty of things I didn't see just by watching a lot, but yeah, I think you can make a lot of different interesting lists this year, which kind of I think just speaks to the overall variety we had across streaming and cable.
Absolutely. So why don't we jump into this list? We'll go 10-1. I'll let you start off, and then we'll do some honorable mentions at the end, and along the way we'll give some feedback and some conversation around just I think different TV topics of the year. So what was your number 10?
Number 10 for me was The Deuce, third and final season.
It's a good one.
HBO, David Simon. Did you have this one?
Honestly, when I wrote down my list, this one kind of slipped my mind. Great season of television, and in retrospect, probably should have been on my top 10, but it's not.
I mean, well, when there's like 15 top 10 shows, it's hard to make the math work. And I contemplated taking this off. I've been on lists in the past. It's the third and final season. David Simon not doing necessarily anything new for him, talking to us about institutions and how they affect people. It's the very Simon, but that also means it's still really strong. And right. I thought I had a really note-perfect ending. I really liked all the arcs we had on this very diverse, satisfying cast of characters we've come to know. So The Deuce, I think it's lately underwatched as far as HBO dramas go, but really tough to find any flaws. I mean, assuming you can overlook the Franco of it all. But yeah, I think The Deuce, this third season really wrapped up a nice way, the extra time jump and all that. So it was really satisfying, the whole journey.
Very satisfying. And the last season, the way it looked at Lori and Candy, I think specifically, just some of Simon's best work, for sure. Number 10 for me. I'm guessing it won't be on your list, but it's a show we talked about at the beginning of the year. Sex Education by
nice.
Lori Nunn. When I was kind of just looking through the TV shows that came to mind is like, what really stood out to me this year? Sex Education might be one of the most pleasant surprises of the year. A show that wasn't Definitely. On my radar at all. It dropped in January. When we watched it and talked about it, I think we both were just delighted at this quirky, funny high school, comedy drama that really highlighted, I think, a lot of different issues within high school, specifically talking about sex in high school, but I think also really got to like the core of like friendship and, not judging people based on trauma and things like that, and just like the way that they present. And it really made a star of like the three teen headliners. You have Gillian Anderson, who's like the seasoned vet, kind of anchoring this down, but Asa Butterfield, Nakuti Gatwa, and
Mm-hmm.
Emma Mackey is specifically. I mean, those three, their profile raised, and Asa Butterfield is already pretty high, but Emma Mackey in particular, I think, shone really bright in this show. And really, it's a show that I want to go back and revisit just because it is really delightful to be in. There's some really funny moments and some really like heartfelt moments about friendship that I think really define it as a great show for this year. Sex Education, my number 10. Number 9 for you.
Yeah, I had that as an honorable mention. It's actually on the list for most of the year. I just axed it more recently, and I'm definitely looking forward to season 2, which is coming out in January. Really, the first or second big show coming out to start the new year, which is always fun.
Can't wait.
Number 9 for me is Mr. Robot season 4, another final season. Where does this one land for you, sir?
Number 6 for me.
So we actually haven't done the full review on this season yet. Just wrapped up right around the holidays, so we're going to get to that early next week. So we'll save more of the in-depth stuff for that. For that, so stay tuned, subscribe, all that. But yeah, man, I found this really satisfying as a fan from the start of Mr. Robot, and the payoff that we got throughout the season with the various characters meeting their ends or end of their journeys. Everything felt really earned and treated with a lot of care, which you come to expect from someone who's such a all-encompassing showrunner, auteur, creative like Sam Esmail. And along the way, you get what you expect with the format bending stuff, with the silent episode, the fake one take way back in the day, right? He always tries to do cool stuff, and the production is always top notch, and that didn't change this time around. So Mr. Robot season 4, I really enjoyed, and I'm again hoping people continue to find this as it develops a larger streaming life as the years go on.
Yeah, I was incredibly satisfied with this show, and the thing I really love about Mr. Robot is that even when it didn't necessarily always hit as a show as a whole, like you think about season 2, which is a bit muddled and slow and paced awkwardly, there's something you can take away from every episode that you don't usually see on television that really stands out. And from this past season, I think it's episode 7, where Elliot is like tied in a chair and Vera is like basically forcing him to like spill all of his secrets, and then he has like the session with Krista, and it's like a 4-act play basically.
Yes.
And it's just so awesome. Like well done and unique, and you don't see things like that on television. And Robot, the way it's shot, the coloring, the way they frame things, the music drops, the score in this past season was just unbelievable. It was I think this last season's a masterpiece, and that's why it's number 6 on my list, which is kind of crazy to say masterpiece, but I really feel like the top like 7 or 8 shows this year are just undeniable. So I can't wait to talk about it more on Monday. Number 9 for me, and I'm wondering if this is on your list, Euphoria.
Yeah, Euphoria is on my list at number 5.
Number 5. Euphoria, another high school drama. Stylistically might be one of the most stunning TV shows of the year. The way it's shot is just brilliant. The coloring on it is brilliant.
Yeah.
And man, Zendaya just, could her stock be any higher right now? Like,
nope.
She just feels like a rocket ship. What did you love about Euphoria? You had it up at number 5.
Yeah, I think production-wise, it perhaps the best-looking show of the year. Again, part of that's the really obvious color saturation and stuff like that. But once we started really watching the show, and by the time you finish it, you understand that like Sam Levinson, it really was his baby, and like having that kind of vision for the show, I think really went a long way. And Euphoria, it's an over-the-top portrayal, but I think it's still really engaging and relatable portrayal to what it's like being a young person in the fast-moving world we have today. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned with Zendaya, already very, very famous at this time, but again, a very winning cast throughout, So Alexa Demi, who's rising fast, just saw her in Waves, Hunter Schafer, Jacob Elordi plays a really good goon,
Angus Cloud.
Yeah, of course. I think he's a lot of people's favorite character on the show, and he's just a supporting player. Like, there's so many great moments, and I think it's in terms of just creating and maintaining a vibe. This is pretty close to unparalleled for this year. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to season 2, which we know is kind of coming this year, which is exciting.
It touches on so many practical issues that people in high school and younger are facing now and dealing with in such a different way. And I think it builds tension really well, and but it still like brings levity. And the way that the show is structured, doing the cold openings for each character, really builds out the depth of the characters on this show. And the cast is, like you said, is undeniable. So great pick. And up at number 5. Number 9 for me. What did you have at number 8?
Number 8 for me is the only miniseries on my list. I think so. It's the only show that's definitely not getting a sequel. Chernobyl.
Chernobyl, the sequel.
Yeah, a true limited series, which is a less and less meaningful phrase as the years go on. For sure. Emmy's category fraud continues unabated. But yeah, Chernobyl, man. Talk about precise pacing. 5 episodes about an historical event most people have at least a pretty Wikipedia level knowledge of. Mm-hmm. And finding a way to make something that's also very sad and unsettling and about bureaucratic failure and stuff like that, and making that engaging and finding a way to deliver characters that you can invest in, even if it's a short amount of time, also while having incredible production value and really, I think, selling everything about the show and having great acting along the way, even if those actors like Jared Harris, like not the most famous people overall. But yeah, I think Chernobyl, the only reason I have it a little lower is just because I think rewatchability, which isn't everything, but like Chernobyl is not like the best hang at times and no one's ever going to watch it a second time, but it's really just an excellent limited series with very few, if any, flaws. So it's hard to take away from it.
Yeah, Chernobyl's an honorable mention for me. Yeah, I think you spoke to it really well, but the way that they portray this tragedy, this event, and the aftermath, and kind of the role that the Russian government played in trying to spin this and cover it up, is just really well done. And it's a riveting miniseries, even though the topic, like you said, isn't always the easiest to hang with. So definitely worthy of being on a top 10 list. Good pick. Number 8 for me is Russian Doll, Natasha Lyonne's TV show from this past year.
6 for me.
6 for you. So Russian Doll was another surprise from this year, earlier in the year. And I think what I love most about this show is it touches on, I think, human topics in such a unique way. But beyond that, it just feels like this was straight from Natasha Lyonne's like bloodstream. Like this was basically it just like portrays her pretty much, and then it throws in a couple other characters around her, but like the part of New York City she's in, the cast of characters you see around her, she's kind of like famously this like New York Cityite who will just be smoking cigarettes on the corner and dressing ridiculously and hanging out people in bodegas, like, and this just feels like her. And I think that's what I love most about the show. It's just, it was fun to hang out with Natasha Lyonne in this way. What made you put it up at number 5 for you?
Yeah, 6. It's also it's just really clever, right? It juggles, I think, weighty, more dramatic themes alongside just really funny stuff throughout. It's less than 4 hours total,
Mhm.
And despite having a short runtime, I think it really packs and uses that emotional wallop quite effectively and precisely, which, again, with like runtime creep being really common nowadays, especially on Netflix, getting to what you say and not rushing to it either, but just telling it your story in a precise way goes a long way. And yeah, it's just the New York City identity of it all is awesome. Just seeing that kind of truly lower Manhattan story being told by someone who just embodies that place. Great.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny to think about too, because the beginning of the season, obviously the whole bit is, she dies and she wakes back up in the same place, but then she starts to find that she can change things if she makes different decisions. But the way it kind of balances, like Alan, played by Charlie Barnett, and his like mental health issues and him like wanting to kill himself, with the way that they kind of make Natasha Lyonne's constant dying at the beginning of the season like a running gag for the first couple episodes. I think they really hammer that home well, and it's such a funny show with so much heart, and I'm really excited to see that come back. Good, another great pick, Dave. I think we're doing a great job so far.
Yeah, me too, man.
So tell me what you got at number 7 then.
Number 7 for me, Barry, season 2, HBO.
Another honorable mention for me.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Barry. I guess I now feel this way about Russian Doll, but Barry was a show that after one season that was really hard to critique. It's like, should it come back? Is it worth coming back? Sometimes the answer is no. When you look at maybe Big Little Lies, or to a lesser extent, Killing Eve, right? Not always coming back for season 2 after a dynamite season 1 is a good thing. But Barry told me to shut up because Hader and Alkberg, they're like, yeah, we got a lot more going on. We got more story to tell. Mm-hmm. And continue to just kind of think, layer in this cast of characters and making Fuchs could become a truly detestable villain, and showing us the source of Barry's PTSD, and also Sarah Goldberg's character's PTSD for a different reason. And it was showing you grief and showing you all this stuff that's not that fun to dissect. It always was a dark show. It always was a dark comedy, but I think it got even deeper and darker this time, but nevertheless was still maintain your attention the whole time. And even Anthony Carrigan somehow managed to become an even stronger character despite being a bit character,
Hank.
And I mean, it looks great the whole time. Hiro Murai's direction needs no introduction. Right. And I think the Ronnie Lilly episode in particular is perhaps one of the best episodes of the year across
top 3,
the whole field. So yeah, Barry, man, also coming back this year. Very excited for that. And it's Bill Hader's best work. It's really cool to see someone who we knew for something so different now find his true creative calling, I guess.
Do you, mentioning the Ronnie Lilly episode, do you have like a top like 2 or 3 episodes of the year for you that stand out? I have 3 specific ones that stand out. I think we'll probably be talking about all the shows, but do you have 3 that come to mind?
Yeah, stuff from Watchmen, stuff from Succession coming up, stuff from Fleabag. Also, I think the Mr. Robot silent episode, just from a format perspective, really stood out to me. A lot of stuff I like from Game of Thrones, Mandalorian as well. But yeah, Ronnie Lilly really had a I think, stark vision and was really awesome.
Yeah.
Especially for, half hour.
Yeah, Ronnie Lilly stands out to me. Like the way that it's shot, it's kind of like on like a swivel cam the whole time, and you're like following Barry's actual perspective with him. Like a tracking shot is pretty cool. I love the nostalgia episode, or nostalgia medication episode from Watchmen, where Regina King is going back in time, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that a little bit more, or re-experiencing her grandfather's memories. And then the last one in the top 3 for me is Game of Thrones. I think it's episode 2, the one where they're preparing for the Battle of Winterfell.
Yes.
And
the Night of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yes, Night of the Seven
Amazing.
Kingdoms. Those 3 for me feel like they're a step above all the others, and that's, you know, that's not even mentioning two of my my 1 and 2 on this list, episodes from that. So really a great year in TV. Great pick with Barry, though. I'm excited to see where they go season 3, because I think the more that they explore his PTSD and his time in during the war and kind of coming back from that, I think the show can really continue to level up. So excited for that. Number 7 for me, David Fincher's Mindhunter season 2.
Ooh. 4 for me.
I mean, absolutely fantastic show. This is right up my alley in terms of interest. I mean, it's crime show. It's psychological. It's serial killers. This season they really wrote in the Atlanta child killings as a major plot point for the second half of the season. And they focus a lot on Holt McCallany's character, Bill Tench a little bit more, and
raising Damien.
Yeah, and I actually think that was a really smart move, because in the first season you get so much of Holden played by Jonathan Groff, and for as much as it was an awesome season of television, I think if we had just been following Groff around as Agent Ford again, we would have been. I think it would have felt a little bit samey. I don't know how much more there was to explore without really building out the other characters around him. And Holt McCallany kills it in this season. That's not even mentioning Anna Torv, who I also think is awesome as Wendy. And yeah, just it's Fincher on television. How could you not love it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, it's interesting too, because season 1 also is much more like cerebral, atmospheric show, whereas season 2, I guess, is a little bit more accessible. It's a little bit more procedural, especially in the back half when we get to Atlanta. But along the way, we start breaking down all this cast of characters and getting inside the head of Holden more, and of course everything with Tench's home life, and of course Wendy as well. You know, with her status as a lesbian at the time, when it's not inviting to be a professional like that. You know, there's a lot of, I think the character arcs are awesome, and then along the way, not just Fincher too, but like the Andrew Dominic episode really stood out just from production standpoint, and then Carl Franklin really just kind of setting the mood all over again once you get to Atlanta. It just in terms of what things look like and production value and just camera technique on television, it's probably the best we've seen this year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think back to the season, and we get interviews with some of the most high profile killers, including Manson, and that whole Manson scene, I think, is just like what the show was built on. And I think what makes this show so compelling moving forward is these, like, going into the minds of these characters, that it's so dark, and seeing how that's building out into their own personal lives as well as they do this work. It's just fascinating stuff. Mindhunter, my number 7. Dave, I think we did your 6, 5, and 4 now. Is that correct?
We've done them all already. 6 is Russian Doll, 5 is Euphoria, 4 is Mindhunter.
So my number 6 was Mr. Robot. My number 5, I don't think you're going to have this on your list, so I'm going to take the ball for a second. I Think You Should Leave, from Netflix, starring Tim Robinson, who also co-created the show with Zach Kanan. And it's a sketch comedy show. Episodes are like 15 minutes. There's only 6 of them. And this might be the funniest show of the year. It's absolutely ludicrous, the situations they get in. And Tim Robinson in every single sketch is just hysterical. But it is probably the show I've revisited most this year. If I ever get back from like a night out or something like that, and I just want to watch something before bed, I almost always throw one of these episodes on, and I've probably rewatched the whole season about 4 or 5 times, just because it's quick. It's 15 minutes, 3 or 4 sketches, and they're all hilarious. The singer sings about skeletons and coming to life. Probably my favorite skit, but man, I don't think there's one truly bad skit on this show. So if you haven't checked out I Think You Should Leave, and you have maybe an hour and a half and you want to get through the whole thing, sit down. I don't think you'll regret it. You'll find yourself going back to it a lot. Also, I Think You Should Leave Out of Context is maybe my favorite new Twitter follow of the year.
I love those out of context accounts. There's so many now.
So many. So number 5, I think you should leave. Number 4 for me, I know it's an honorable mention for you, The Mandalorian.
Yep.
Jon Favreau's pillar television show
Mando.
Disney Plus. Man, wrapped up 2 weeks ago now, and we haven't had a chance to talk
season review
about it.
Coming next week.
So we'll get a little bit more in depth to it, but I think especially after The Rise of Skywalker, which you should check out our review on that, and we gave some thoughts, gave some takes.
A lot of thoughts.
I think after seeing the way that concluded that trilogy in such a, for me, mildly satisfying way, the way that this season of television established characters, established probably the most important person in my life in terms of Baby Yoda, and then also did basically like individual like mission episodes that then somehow tied together at the end beautifully and had some of the best action sequences on television this year. I don't know how I could leave this off, and especially the finale for this is incredibly satisfying. Everything feels very earned, and shout out to Taika Waititi, because he absolutely kills the last episode. So good. Not only as IG, but in terms of direction.
Yeah, again, we'll get to more of it next week for the full season review, but I think Mandalorian, what's cool to take away from it is when you look at the whole season as a whole, there's a lot of traditional genre storytelling choices with it, where you have some more mission of the week style stuff, like the prison episode with Bill Burr's gang, and the Sanctuary episode with Chicken Walker, and the Tatooine episode as well. But along the way, you're coloring in the characters more. So when you get the penultimate and finale, they land in such a satisfying way. And like when you have such a dynamite finale, you can look back on the journey the season went on and just be even more satisfied. And we'll go with casting, everything, the technology behind the shooting. There's a lot of great stuff about the show. We'll get more into it next week. But yeah, it's it just left me satisfied just about every week. And I think sometimes that's all that matters. Yeah.
I mean, there's so many episodes that stand out, but I think the one for me that stands out most is the Gunslinger. Where they have to go onto the ship and break out the person in terms of to bring him back and get the bounty, but it's part of that group with Bill Burr, and man, the like strobe light scene in that is so sick, and just everybody that directed an episode this season really stood out. Obviously Favreau did a lot of them, but I am incredibly excited to see what Deborah Chow can now do in terms of Star Wars, and she's going to be directing all the Obi-Wan stuff. So can't wait to talk about it on Monday. Your number 4 was
Mindhunter.
So number 3 for you, Dave.
Number 3 for me. Show that everyone loves. Succession, season 2 on HBO.
Also my number 3. Wow.
It was number 2 for a long time, and then Damon Lindelof came. So it had to go down a slot. But that is no shot at Succession, which is, I won't call it monocultural. The ratings aren't amazing, but it did have a legitimate week-to-week presence, and perhaps the strongest week-to-week presence HBO has in the post-Thrones world at this point. I don't know, but it's especially for an ongoing show anyway. Man, just watching the show week to week and seeing what happens with this truly motley crew of characters, so satisfying. And the way the show has managed through 2 seasons now to lampoon the incredibly wealthy and not lionize them, but still make them fun to hang out with and see what the fuck they're up to. Man, the Roy family, I cannot wait for season 3. The show's so good.
It's so good, and it just is fun. Like it's everything I love about television, where it's maybe not the characters I love to follow, but the storylines are ridiculous but tantalizing, and you really do start to connect, or at least feel like you like hanging out with these characters and you're rooting for them, even though they're really just shitty people. And
Yeah,
it's shot so
definitely.
beautifully, and it's fun to talk about every week. And it really also kind of keeps you on your toes, because like the season finale, everybody was saying who's going to be the sacrifice, the blood sacrifice. Is it going to be some Greg Sprinkles, is it going to be Shiv or what? But no, it ended up, they flipped it on its head, and that's so good. The show is so well written, man. And
Yeah.
shout out to Mark Mylod, who directed the last two episodes. And the last episode in particular, where they're on that yacht, there's so much imagery and metaphor going on in the way that things are set up and the way that they're shot. It's really just impressive. And obviously it helps that they shoot on location in these pretty amazing locations, but still just a pleasure to look at.
Yeah, the thing is too, it produces the memes and the jokes and has the humor, but you're also invested in the character dynamics and the drama that is the actual plot of the show, and the fact that it gives you both on a consistent basis, I think, which is what makes it so great. The quote Cousin Greg, was it if it is to be said, then so it is. Let's go with that.
I think we have the same top three. So Succession was my number 3. Number 2, Watchmen for me. Same for you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. We just talked about Watchmen a couple weeks back. So I don't know.
17-minute review. So go get that.
I don't know if there's much more to add. I mean, having a couple weeks, I guess, to let it marinate in your mind. Anything that really stands out to you about Watchmen that we didn't talk about in the review?
No, not really. I think just overall, we have no news of any future seasons. Again, I hope that we just leave it alone. Doesn't sound like Damon has any interest in going back. So I think I'd be even less interested in going back without him, even if he would, I guess, maybe be open to elevating more voices in his absence. But yeah, I think the essential conceit of the show is that, with the first superhero being black but needing to pretend he was white to actually be a superhero was a genius way to connect to Alan Moore's central thesis of his landmark comic. Why would someone put on a mask in general? And Damon finding a way to use genre once again to get to those themes that he's always cared about most, that we know from Lost and The Leftovers, that how characters process grief
trauma
and drama and whatever is way more important to him than the actual plot of it all, right?
Of course.
Meanwhile, the Watchmen plot's still super compelling, and the characters are so great. And even though inevitably it does end up giving us a lot of Dr. Manhattan stuff, the format of some of those episodes when we learn more about stuff from Cal, it's a true. It's still really. I can't believe it was as good as it was. It was truly exceeded my expectations. I think it really set a new bar for making a sequel or a remix.
Nice adaptation. It was such a risk. I feel like it's very beloved in terms of the fans it has, and it felt risky to take this on and to say like, all right, I'm going to remix, I'm going to add on to the story, because I think a lot of people didn't necessarily want to go in liking it. Sometimes with IP like this, people don't want to see it touched. They don't want to see it expanded upon unless it's the original creator. And even then, it can be a bit dicey. And the way he was able to pull this off, build new characters that really spoke to the story, spoke to the underlying meaning of it all, was just so impressive. And man, I looked through the list of showrunners and creators on this list, and out of all of them, I mean, maybe Lindelof, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and Sam Esmail are like the only ones, and I guess Simon on your list as well are the ones that have like my season pass, for sure. That I'm gonna check out whatever they put out. So looking forward to whatever his next project is, for sure. But Watchmen, our number 2, and that means our number 1. Dave, what is it?
Fleabag season 2, and hopefully the final season.
That
sounds like it'll be at least for a long, long time. I hope. I don't know. Fleabag was put on number 1. When did this come out? June, May.
Yeah, May.
It's been a while, and it was just slotted there. Succession came, Watchmen came, but Fleabag season 2 is the show in general, which made both of our decade lists, by the way. Check that out on YouTube and SoundCloud, all those places. But Fleabag is a format shattering, TV changing type of show. Mm-hmm. And nothing else is attempting to do that. So not a fault for anyone else, but Fleabag just kind of in a different stratosphere. It's playing a different game. And that's why it's the best show of the year. And that's why even if people like season 1 more, which there are people that do, Fleabag should still be the best show of the year because it's just operating in a different plane. And the way it leveled up with having the Hot Priest, having Andrew Scott notice that Fleabag is talking to the audience and being like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? Well, genius shit. Yeah, like, it was great. So good. And what was that? In general, just changing the way the show for 2 seasons has changed the way the audience has a relationship with their protagonist. It's unbeatable.
It's such a good scene when he recognizes it, when he's like, what was that? And she like looks back at the screen. He's like, that right there. What are you doing? Like, you finally feel like this person, Fleabag, who has been carrying around so much guilt and so much shame and so much self-loathing that has inhibited her from developing a meaningful, loving relationship, allowing someone else to love her, allowing herself to truly love someone else since her friend died, and she feels responsible for that. To finally feel like she's letting someone in to see her in that way, it totally flips the show, and it brings in themes of religion and what it truly means to be self-actualized, to be fulfilled, to explore your soul. It's so good. And then to end the way it did with like the fox, I mean, just like it's note perfect. It's, we don't usually say pieces of art on this are perfect, but this really might be a perfect season of television. 24-minute episodes that are so tight. So well
shout out BBC, man.
Shout out Olivia Colman. I mean, she's like the third most important person on this, and I love every scene she's in. She's so fantastic, and especially that first episode of season 1 is so good. It's basically like a bile episode inside that restaurant. It's just, man, the show is so smart. The way that Phoebe was able to collaborate with Harry Bradbeer to shoot this and to develop it is just really impressive. And man, I can't wait to see where she goes. Any last thoughts on Fleabag?
No, it's funny, it's dramatic, it's everything, man.
Yeah.
I think my favorite funny bit about it though is the thing. It happens twice where they make a reference to God and the painting falls over. Mm-hmm. It's hilarious.
No, I agree. It's just so good. Really, that's my expert analysis on it. Dave, give me your 10 through 1. I'll do mine. Then we'll do some honorable mentions real quick.
Yeah, 10, The Deuce, 9, Mr. Robot, 8, Chernobyl, 7, Barry, 6, Russian Doll, 5, Euphoria, 4, Mindhunter, 3, Succession, 2, Watchmen, and 1, Fleabag.
My 10, Sex Education, 9, Euphoria, 8, Russian Doll, 7, Mindhunter, 6, Mr. Robot, 5, I Think You Should Leave, 4, The Mandalorian, 3, Succession, 2, Watchmen, and 1, Fleabag. Dave, your honorable mentions, please.
Yeah. I just want to note, too, for my top 10, 6 of the shows are from HBO. 2 are from Netflix.
I think I had 3 Netflix and 3 HBO.
And then Robots USA and Fleabag is BBC/Amazon.
Yeah. So, Game of Thrones, how close did that come to your top 10?
I think I have it at 12. It was in the top 10 for a lot of the year. Certainly an honorable mention. Again, we've elaborated on the season at length at this point, and it's my number 1 show of the decade. It's not a slight against the show at all. But it was also a strong year. And it also was not the strongest Thrones season.
Major slight against the show, Dave. Major slight. Yeah, it wasn't very close for me. We've talked about it ad nauseum, but certainly not the strongest season. Tough to wrap it up when in a satisfying way for the fan base, I think. Stranger Things, that come close to your top 10?
Not really. That's in like the late teens range, I guess. Yeah, I mean, you had Sex Education. That was another mention for me. Glow, season 3, honorable mention for me.
Good one.
Also, Legion, True Detective, Veep, Mandalorian as well. Yeah, I mean, there's all shows that, I don't really have any issues with. Stuff like What We Do in the Shadows, the latest Maisel, Righteous Gemstones, Black Mirror, It's a lot of good stuff. You just got to kind of make those cuts. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Fosse Verdon.
Yep, I was going to mention that one. The Good Place is a show I continue to enjoy. I know you don't watch it. Rick and Morty, too. You mentioned before we recorded, a lot of the TV shows ended this year. Thrones being very notable in that. Mr. Robot as well. What else we got?
Veep, Silicon Valley, The Deuce, a lot of HBO ending. Legion, Easy on Netflix. Fleabag for now, we'll see. Potentially Big Little Lies, potentially True Detective, don't know. End of the Fucking World, I think, has ended. Arrested Development has ended technically.
Yeah, I'll believe that when they're all dead.
Yeah, I just don't know if that show wasn't good enough this time to go back and with the tambour of it all. Other stuff that we don't really review on the show, but a lot of big stuff ended this year as well. Jane the Virgin, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Baskets, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Orange is the New Black, Broad City, The OA, Transparent, You're the Worst, Preacher, and even stuff that's not that great, like Big Bang Theory, Ballers, Supernatural, Suits, Power's about to end. BoJack and The Good Place, I believe, will be ending this month.
Man, putting BoJack in that not so great category.
No, there's a period at the sentence. That was a new statement.
Gotcha.
Shows that aren't good though. Man, The High Castle has ended. Remember when people cared about that?
First season, it's okay.
Yeah, didn't tell me to keep watching. Let's put it that way. Also, all the Marvel Netflix shows got canceled. Canned for various reasons. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. You look at that, and a lot of those shows, critical shows, popular shows, cable and premium, it's definitely moving into a new wave. And for HBO, it's what we got now. We got Succession, we got His Dark Materials, and Westworld's return. God help us.
HBO has some work to do, but I'm not too concerned about them, honestly.
We should also shout out the shows that we don't watch that are good.
When they
Unbelievable, When They See Us, Pose, Better Things, Rami, Pen 15, people like The Boys. These shows just got canceled, but I know people really like Lodge 49 and Tuca and Birdie. Again, watched a lot of shit. Can't watch it all. Sorry.
Can't watch it all. Wanted to shout out real quick True Detective season 3 though.
Yeah, man.
Not going to be close to my top 10 list, but Mahershala, his performance in that is really good.
He's close.
Yeah, he should get all the shout outs. It's flawed season, but him playing the same character at 3 different points in his life, and one of them being a person that has memory issues, dementia, potentially, it's pretty impressive. So
yeah,
worth checking out. You're wrapping up your holiday season right now, so if you have some time and you want to watch some TV and you've already gotten through our top 10 lists, maybe check out some True Detective. I don't know, but let us know what you think of our list. Hit us up at NowstalgiaPod on Twitter. Go to youtube.com/NowstalgiaPod and subscribe to the page and comment on this video and let us know what would be in your top 10, what we got right, what we got wrong. We'll be back on Monday talking a whole load of movies, some television, maybe some music. I don't know. Is there any music you want to talk about?
No, not yet. But our gems are staying uncut. Let's put it that way.
Can't wait to talk about that. Until Monday, peace out.